All pagan, all the time.
Witch College. Learn anything, anytime, anywhere education. witchcollege.co.
Aromagees Botanica, a metaphysical store for mind, body, and spirit. Oils, herbs, candles, crystals, teas, handmade soaps, tarot cards, everything you need on your magical journey. Daily psychic and tarot readings, classes, witchcraft, pagan, and hoodoo supplies, most of it made in-house. Try our free dress your own candle station. From spiritual gifts to ritual supplies to religious books, we have the widest selection of metaphysical products in all of Tennessee since 1999. It is our goal to inspire everyone to explore their spirituality in their own way by offering information and products in a nurturing multicultural environment. Open 7 days a week. 223 Donaldson Pike, Nashville, Tennessee, or visit us online at aromagees.com.
Oh, fire, fire, oh, fire, call fire department. Oh, wait, never mind. Fluffy says that he's smudging the house. Yep, smudging the house. He's been stressing how important it is to indulge in psychic hygiene. Yep, move that energy. Well, okay, I'm gonna go over here and chew on Fluffy's foot. I'm gonna go smudge the foot so it smells better, get rid of all that bad juju. I don't want his other foot to fall off. Remember, look us up on With the Fluff. Love ya. Bye. Ow.
Hi, everyone. It's another episode of Everyday Witchcraft. The special guest we have today is returning. We have Pheonix Lenore, and she's up in Ohio. How you doing today, Pheonix?
Good. How are you doing today, Atalanta?
I'm good. I'm good. So today we're going to talk about rituals, how, the steps, how to write one, the purpose behind each step of the ritual, and what kind of rituals have you participated in?
I have done some rituals at some festivals. So those have been pretty large rituals with a big group of people, you can really feel the energy. That's a nice time. I've done some smaller rituals when I was a baby witch that got got us in a little bit of trouble, which I'll let you guys know about that later. And I've done some actual rituals online, uh, like on Facebook or with people that aren't right here with me, and those have actually gone very well too. So I've done quite a few.
All different kinds. Yeah, there's so many
Yes.
reasons to have ritual. I mean, people think of just full moon or the Sabbath, which are very important. But even like a wedding or a hand fasting,
Mhm.
those are rituals. Wickening,
Yes.
meditation, a ritual prior to your meditation. There's so many different types. Even the process of taking a bath can be a ritual. So
Yes, most definitely. Even partaking in a meal can be a ritual.
that's true. That's true.
Or
Yeah. So there's
your
so many
snack
different.
for lunch every day. So
Mhm.
there's several different ways we can put some rituals in, because a ritual is just basically a routine if
Mhm.
you look at it that way.
It's a fancy
And
routine.
how, yeah, it's either how fancy or how laid back it
You can
needs to
take,
be, because
you can
sometimes,
take anything in your surroundings and you can create a sacred space and work magic. I know you do that a lot because, just in your cooking, that's a ritual in a sense too. I'm sure, whenever you're making your meals because you're the kitchen witch. So
yes, like from coming out, getting the recipe tweaked to, figuring out what extra herbs I want to add to help set my intention, and how do I want to cook this? Like, do I want to boil it? Do I want to fry it? Do I want to cook it over the open flame? Those can all add the different energy to it as well for whatever ritual or uh whatever I'm creating the meal for.
right, right. So when you prior to doing ritual, do you take a special bath? Do you smudge? What do you do in entering into one?
Depends on the time that I have. If I can do an entire cleansing ritual bath, and also depending upon like what type of ritual we're doing. Like if it is something that we like truly need to be cleansed and purified, I will even go through a process of fasting before some rituals to like really cleanse. Like I will do a 3-day fast, or heck, if I only have a 24 hours, sometimes I'll do a 24-hour fast, and then I'll take my ritual bath, and then after the ritual, there's sometimes cake snails, and that'll be my nourishment to get me going back, for the results that we'll be waiting for from our ritual.
Well, a ritual bath is always really important. You
Mhm.
want to show up clean, you want to be respectful, and you want to wash away all that negative energy and stuff. I know you and I had talked before, and you mentioned just washing your hands. If that's the
Yes.
only thing that you can do, if that's how, just washing your hands. What about that? People that work a lot, what can they
A
do?
lot a lot of times I actually will do that before I leave work to leave some of that negative energy behind. But like I know I'm always a lot of times on the run trying to get to things, and sometimes I don't have time to come home and take a ritual bath. So I will do like I'll wash my hands and let that negative energy run down the drain. If I usually keep a little spray bottle of Florida water or tobacco cologne, or even Congo water to cleanse myself with. If head to toe, I'll spray my hands, I'll rub it together, I'll wipe myself down and go on. Or if I can smudge, I'll smudge. So I do a few different things depending upon what
Time
time
in the
we have.
situation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah. Sometimes.
It's so important to make sure that you do some kind of a cleansing and get rid of that energy. And, Palo Santo, you can smudge with that, or
Mhm.
sage. There's
Yes.
other herbs that they mix that you can do that. There's spray you can use, like you were talking about
Mhm.
using Florida water and stuff. Yeah, you can put that in a spray bottle, or like you said, just put it in your hands, and so there's so many different things. The next thing that you want to do, obviously, is gather your tools and stuff. What about clothing? What do you wear for ritual?
Depending upon ritual, if it is me, myself, and I can be sky clad, that's what I am. I have a black robe that I've had ever since I was a baby witch that I like to wear that's like super silky and comfortable. And I have a vintage dashiki that I picked up years ago that I love to wear for ritual.
I have a robe that I wear if I'm not sky clad, and if I do wear it, then I'm sky clad under it because it
Underneath,
just
yeah.
feel closer, closer to God and goddess and nature that way. Um,
Yes.
but as far as clothing and jewelry and stuff like that, it's important to remember to keep your ritual clothing and jewelry separate from your daily wear,
Yes,
because
indeed.
it's special and it's blessed and it's consecrated. Do you do that with your clothing? I know tools and stuff, we all consecrate them, but with your I know with mine I do.
I have, and yeah, I've consecrated everything that I've worn ritual wise. I was like, I had to think about that. Like, have I done all of them? Yes.
Yeah, I just do it whenever I consecrate my tools. I go ahead and throw all my stuff together and just and
Yep. Do it all.
do it all at once. So
Yes.
well, the first thing, besides cleansing and the ritual bath, is you want to kind of set up your foundation and cast your circle. And it's important that you do that because you're building like the foundation. You build the foundation, and then you ask God and Goddess, Great Spirit, ancestors, all them to come in. So you have the four quarters, and you call the four quarters. Sometimes you can actually walk around and cast the circle like with a bell, walk around in a clockwise motion, and that kind of gets it started. And then call the quarters. Is there a special way that you call quarters?
No, I generally will call on the elements a little bit more, um, instead of, it's kind of more simple. So I like to call on the elements. And then I also, depending upon what spell I'm doing, I might start with the north. I might start with the east. I might start with the west. Or, fire might be the behind that particular ritual that I'm doing, and I'll start with the south because we know that we're gonna come back and close all of those in reverse and make everything tidy again. But I like to do that, and if it's just a general ritual, I'll do north or east.
I start with north and or east predominantly. I never really
Mhm.
thought about starting in other directions until you and I were talking. And I find that really interesting. And I think that's amazing. I think that, we should always kind of figure, what is this particular spell about or the rituals for, or, and then start with that particular direction. So
Yeah,
that's
and
really,
once you figure your intention, then that's where you go from all that so that we can build and figure out what tools do we need, what what dress are we wearing,
Mhm.
is there going to be more than one of us doing this together, so it helps us kind of do that basic outline and figure out what we need and then keep it moving so that the ritual goes super smooth for us.
What about calling in God and Goddess? Do you call in both, or do you just, because a lot of people just call in Goddess, but what do you do with yours?
I like to call in both. I like that balance to be there. It But then there are some rituals where, and it is really more or less the goddess that I'm calling in, but I have uh read some rituals that I've looked up that some have even just called in the god, depending upon the work that they're doing. So I think that's, it's one of that's once you figure out your intention, then that helps me figure out, am I calling in both of you, which I generally do. But sometimes on my full moon ritual, sometimes I just call in the goddess because it's that I need that goddess energy. I
Right.
need to recharge.
I like we all need to do that sometimes. But I like the balance. I like to have both God and goddess. Predominantly that's what I do is I call in both,
Hmm.
but not always, like you said, on the full moon, sometimes you just want that goddess power in there. Ancestors. I call in ancestors for protection and to stand with me. Do you call in ancestors?
That is something I recently just started adding to the ritual work that I've been doing. And I like the company.
It's always good to have family. Always good to have family surrounding you. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
to call in ancestors too, usually for, protection, of course,
Yes.
and guidance, The what about the Great Spirit? Have you ever called in the Great Spirit, all encompassing as one?
I personally myself have not, but I have been to several rituals where they have called it called it in that way as the
Mhm.
Great Spirit. And I feel just as much energy as I do with, I think as long as everybody's on that same page, I I'm down with whoever they call in.
Just more the merrier. So
Yes.
casting the circle. Okay, it's done. What raising energy. That's really important. To raise energy and kind of you've got your circle cast. And remember, it's like a globe. It's not like just a circle this way, it's all the way. That helps hold in the energy that you're building. It helps hold in your magic. It protects you.
Hmm.
Whenever you envision your circle, what is it like?
I kind of think of it like the boy in the bubble. I don't know if anybody remembers that movie where the kid he had like, I think he had autoimmune situation and he was in this big plastic sphere, this big plastic ball. Only I imagine my feet like me being like midway and you've got the ball like going all the way around you, like you're just in a big old glass ball, almost like you're in a hamster ball.
A
And you've
hamster
got
ball.
all the protection around you. But I generally, raise it in white or think of white light energy. But if I'm doing like love spell or if I'm, thinking a love ritual, I might envision the sphere in pink. If I'm doing healing for someone, I'll envision the protection around us in blue. So I switch up because I like to use color a lot. So I'll switch that up in my mind's eye. It helps me build a stronger area of protection for myself.
I really like that. I like the idea of using color, just
Mhm.
depending on what kind of working you're doing. I really like that. I'm going to start incorporating that in mine because it's a really good idea. But
A lot of
raising energy,
times, sorry, a lot of times I like just envision like this whole entire world in a big pink ball because like we need that love energy.
we do. Yep. What about raising energy? Like how to, get that energy flowing? What do you do for that? I mean, I've
I
done
like
as
to
simple as ringing a
dance
bell.
and I like to dance. I like to drum. I have a bell. I have a rattle that I use quite often. But definitely drumming and dancing. If I could sing, singing would be up there. I have a girlfriend that chants to raise energy, and it's amazing, and it does wonders. Heck, I even dance while she's chanting. I mean,
Get it
we
going.
raise all sorts of energy when it's time to raise energy.
Absolutely. And it's important to do that because that's what kind of gets everything moving and getting that magic going, Is it,
Yeah.
what kind of workings do you do? Do you do all your spell work with ritual or do you do some spell work without the formal ritual setting up?
A lot of times, my stuff is I just do something super basic. It's not anything really elaborate unless I'm working with other people, then I do a little more elaborate stuff. like sabbats or more elaborate. But like I do candle magic almost every day, and I don't go through a whole the whole
Calling in the
thing to
porters.
do it. Yeah, I don't call in all of that. I will like anoint my candle. Sometimes I'll dress the candle. Generally I'll anoint it over doing both. And I use like my chime candles because they go super quick. But even like lunch for me can be a small tiny ritual.
Yeah, you're the
So or
kitchen witch. So I guess every day, whenever you're in the kitchen cooking, that's a ritual in itself, you know? So
yeah, it depends on the purpose and intent you want to put in the meal. Like, and I try to be in a good space when I'm cooking, or when I'm performing rituals too. You want to make sure your energy is good, which is why we've done that cleansing earlier, and then we're rebuilding that because you want to fill yourself up with good energy. You don't really, if you're not feeling good, you're not in a good mood, don't do it.
right.
Don't participate in it because you're going to draw some bad energy in there that you don't want.
You know, there's something that's really important too. When you go into ritual with other people, you
Hmm.
have to really be able to trust them because you're
Yes.
kind of putting yourself out there. I had a situation, it's been quite so many years now, where I went, and this is something that, people really need to pay a lot of attention to. But I was in a coven, and it was Samhain, which is, when the veil is thinnest between life and death.
Hmm.
And we called in, did everything we were supposed to do. Everything got closed up, went home. The next day I woke up, I was covered in scratches. I mean, like a cat scratched me, bloody scratches, and it wouldn't go away. So it took, I don't know how long, it took probably 3 weeks or so before I could
Oh,
finally get that negativity off of me. And I have pictures. I kept waking up, more scratches, more scratches. Come to find out that one of the girl that we were in her home and doing Samhain, was practicing necromancy in the other room and left everything open. Yeah, it was horrible. And it took me quite a while to get rid of that negative entity that was attached to me. So
wow. See,
it,
my story is not that deep, but we were baby witches and I think we thought we did everything right. And there were three of us, and we did just a very basic spell. We apparently didn't close something because then my girlfriend ended up with bats in her apartment for 3 years. And I was like, ooh, look, 1, 2, 3. We messed that up. There's something we didn't
oops.
do. But that
Yep.
was, us being inexperienced baby witches, and we learned a lesson. But,
Yeah.
you've got to be careful and hope that people know what they're doing. And you need
Hmm.
to know what's going on yourself as well. You need to at least educate yourself a little bit before you go to a ritual. And
Exactly.
then there
That's
is etiquette, I think. If people are of different paths, uh, I, then you respect that. You don't belittle anybody. But if I'm coming to something that you're doing and you don't do things exactly how I do it, I'm here for the ride. I want to learn what you do and be involved in it so that I can grow myself personally more as a witch and maybe incorporate some of the things that you did at your ritual into my next ritual.
exactly. Exactly. Because there's so many different traditions and paths,
Mm-hmm.
and people, and I know that when I write a ritual, I try to include everyone's tradition
Mm-hmm.
somehow in it. It's not always possible, but
Right, right.
you try to do it, and it is very nice whenever you go somewhere and it's kind of completely different. Because like you
Mm-hmm.
said, you might pick something up that you want to carry home with you, not an entity, but something,
Yes, don't bring
not
that
an
or that,
entity. No
but
entities.
definitely no entities. No
No
entities.
entities. We just leave them where they are. So yeah, do you
What
do
about
like a
working?
magical working? Do you do a spell? Do you do like a teaching, or all of the above?
All of the above, pretty much. I it it really depends on what we've got going on. Like, because sometimes this particular ritual is to teach us all something, and then sometimes we have workings that we need to do for people, and that's a whole nother level of the how deep are we going with this ritual, what are we doing, what do we need, because there's so many different ways to work stuff, and like sometimes we've gathered together just in a collective for a few minutes, call up some of my other witchy friends, like, hey y'all, we need to get this energy out here, and we don't really do a full-blown ritual, but we all take those couple minutes to focus and send that to that person. So there's lots of different, i I love the different workings that we can do, because sometimes we've got time to sit down and even you know do all of the things and do a full cast with a dinner and everything afterwards. And sometimes we got 10 minutes that we can get together with a group of our other witches and perform a quick ritual for someone. I mean, we had a tragedy happen last month in our family, and I reached out to you like, hey girl, we got to try to do something, what do I do?
Yep.
And you make it happen.
Make it happen. There's just so many things you can do. Okay, how about cakes and ale? Let's talk about that a little bit. It's the great rite. You have the chalice, you have the athame. The athame is to the god as the chalice is to the goddess. You put them
Yes,
together. That represents the great rite,
the
which
great
is,
right.
the god and goddess coming together and making themselves one. So, as far as cakes and ale, a lot of times, you don't have to have beer or wine if you don't drink.
Right.
You can use grape juice, you can use soda, you can use whatever you have around the house, and cakes, we call it cakes. It could be a piece of bread, it could be a cracker, any of those things, but it's so you never thirst and so you never hunger. I know with you being a kitchen witch, you probably get a little more elaborate though, right?
It depends, like, because sometimes, like, if it's just me, I will get my sometimes glass of wine, some cheese, some crackers, a little bit of fruit, and I'll have that's my cakes and ale. Or sometimes it is like I'll grab a cookie,
Mhm.
or I love cheese strolls, like just very easy stuff. Or like you said, sometimes it's just a piece of bread
Mhm.
with some good old butter on it.
Mm-hmm. Something
And
simple.
wintertime I like to do like hot tea
Mm-hmm.
instead of beer or wine or something. Flavored waters, you can use those. Heck, you can make yourself some spa water, and then even the fruit that you put in there, or the veg that you throw, like the herbs that you throw in there, you could honestly make them work with the ritual that we just got done doing, and refresh yourself still inside with even more nutrients from what we've just done.
It's important to, it's the representation, not the formality,
Yes.
and these little things that we're talking about, it's the representation and the intention that you're setting.
Yes.
You don't have to have all the bells and whistles and things like
Whistles.
that, like tools. I like to use tools, but not
Yes.
everybody does that. A lot of
Mm.
people just use their hands, their finger to
Yes.
point to cast, things like that.
Sorry. I
So
also, with
it's
the
really
cakes and ale after ritual, that kind of gives you time to come down. Because, like, there is a level of high that comes with being in ritual. Like, that energy, you need to get yourself back in the out of the metaphysical a little bit, and come back in, especially if you got to drive somewhere, honestly. Like, you really need to get back in your headspace, and that's a lot of times what I take my cakes and ale as time to kind of ground, because you are grounding yourself and coming back into your space.
Right. Yeah, that's important. You actually can get high. You have that sensation that you're actually high whenever you're in a high energy place and you're working all that magic, and you can't come down, you know. You have to ground, center, release, shield, all that kind of stuff. It's important, you know, and that doesn't always happen. Now, I know that during ritual itself, if you don't do it, when you're done, you should at least, you know, do it yourself. We hold our things online, our little rituals online, and you know, we're coven sisters, so you know, and a lot of times we'll do that grounding. But even if that doesn't happen when we're together, when we're done, everybody should make sure that they do that. It's really important, you know, and that gets forgotten sometimes.
Oh yes, a lot of times after ritual outside, like people literally see me hugging the tree, barefoot hugging a tree. They're like,
There's
"What is
nothing
she
wrong
doing?"
with it.
If you know, you know. Some people don't know.
Some people don't know. That's cute.
Like,
Yeah.
therefore, I get called a tree hugger quite often.
I don't mind that title. I don't mind that title at all.
But
Yeah.
like, if you know, I'll take my shoes off and ground myself. Like, say you're indoors and you really have nowhere to ground yourself. The whole like washing the hands thing and letting that energy go out the drain. Or a lot of times, like I've got plants, so I'll mess with my plants. At
Oh,
least get
that's a
my
good
finger
idea.
if I can't go outside, because like right now it's snowing out there, and I'm not going to be barefoot out
No.
there. But if I can handle something inside, like a plant, or I'll even take hold onto some crystals and just let that energy go.
Which crystal do you find works, or crystals do you find work the best?
Uh,
Something like selenite?
Honestly, a lot of times I just have quartz. I have a really nice chunk of rose quartz that I've gotten that I like. And also, I have a chunk of amethyst that I like to use myself. I like the amethyst because of the calming, the rose quartz because of the love property, and just regular quartz because it's like the do all universal, like white candle type of stone for me.
Let's talk about that for a minute. You mentioned the white candle. Whenever you're calling quarters, okay, we know that there's different color representations. You know, north is green, east is yellow, and south is fire. It's red. I have to think about it. West is blue. Okay, I think I got them right. If you don't have that particular color of a candle, because a lot of times that's what we use to represent the different
Mhm.
corners, what do you do?
I'll substitute white, or generally I'll substitute white. Or there's, usually a couple other color references that associate with each color. So, like, say you don't have red, but you might have orange
Mhm.
for fire. You might be able to, you could kind of sub that a little bit. Maybe not the exact same meaning, but once you cleanse it and bless it and consecrate it, it'll mean whatever you tell it you want it to mean,
That's true.
because you've put that energy in there and you've told it what it is going to do for you and
Right.
what you need from it. I've asked it to help you out. So, but a lot of times I just will sub white. I keep white tea lights. Heck, I keep birthday candles around in case I got to do a little 5 minute spell somewhere, or a little quick 5 minute ritual.
Yeah,
Because
birthday
you never
candles are
know.
great. Yeah, you
Yeah.
never know when you need to do something. So,
I've
um,
even gone as far as using the salt packs from my fork and spoon set from fast food restaurants before,
that's
and a bottle of
fantastic.
water.
The weirdest,
Well,
strangest experience that I've ever had was, I mean, I can't go into it too much because, you know, you're not really supposed to, but I'll just give you a general idea. Being initiated into a coven, there's different, you know, processes that you go through and different steps that you do. And like I said, I can't go into it too much, but I was being initiated into a coven for one of my degrees. And let's see, how do I put this? Well, there was candles everywhere. It was in a living room of someone's house. There were candles everywhere. The candles went off and set the fire alarm off, right? Now, we are blindfolded, and we're on the ground and blindfolded. And there's a big pentagram, which I didn't know because we're blindfolded. I didn't know the pentagram was there at the time, but there's a big pentagram on the floor. And the alarm went off. We shut it off, or the high priestess shut it off, and then came back. We continued with ritual, and the fire department showed up. So when they showed up, and they just kind of opened up the door and they looked in, she said, like I said, I was on the floor, and I was blindfolded, so I didn't get to see anything. I could hear everything. But yeah, she said that the guy just kind of looked in there and was like, okay, and then they shut the door and they left. So yeah, that happened.
Oh man. All I got's the bats, girl. All I got's the bats.
Oh, I got so many.
Me drew in the bats, but that is fantastic. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
No, I have been to some things like I was at an event and a particular performer started, and the sky was, and she's a witch. The sky was bright blue and wide open. There was not a cloud in the sky. She brought the storm in with her set, like your hair raised up on the back of your neck, like you could feel the electricity. She literally brought the storm in, and as she finished her set, the storm rolled out.
Wow.
I was like, now that's some power right there.
That's some power behind you right there. Wow.
Literally, the sky opened back up, and I should have known we were in for it when I got there, and her stage setup was a huge ankh and incense burners and candles everywhere. I should have known something was going to happen.
Something was going to happen. Yeah, something was going to happen.
But I did. I felt like, I was like, wow. Now that's some energy that she brought in the storm, and she took out the storm. But I haven't the fire. No, I haven't dealt with the fire department.
It was so funny because when everything was said and done, eventually you get unblindfolded and
Yes.
And looking around the setting, it was beautiful. It was a room just, full of candles.
Gorgeous.
Like I said, there was a pentagram on the floor. Okay, yeah. Also, another little story. It's not quite as good as your storm story, but it's similar. Every year we go to Puff Pagan Unity Festival in Tennessee. Yay. Mm-hmm. It rains every single year. It always does. It rains every year. And it used to be held outside. And so, you would, it's just, you're prepared for it. It comes down and tents blowing everywhere and all that kind of stuff. You just make do with it. We had a storm coming in one year, and it was supposed to be pretty severe. So all the witches went out into the field, all out, they had all the tents kind of like this. And then we all went out into the field and all started pushing the weather, pushing it away from us. And we got it. On the radar, you could see like storm was just everywhere except there's one little spot. It was all nice and clear. Now I'm going to tell you, how weather works. You push it away, it's going to crash eventually, right?
Oh yes.
Yeah, it did. But we had it nice and clear for the daytime anyway. So it was nice and pretty and clear for the day. And then as it got later, then it came back. But that was a lot.
And we got washed down the hill. We got soaked last year too, so
I know.
I did too.
I got drenched. Everything, the tent actually filled up with water. It was like a couple of inches in there.
I was so glad I brought a cot that year.
I didn't bring a cot.
And most of my stuff's in plastic totes. So, but yeah, I think everybody that. We called it the baptismal of Puff.
The baptismal of Puff. Yeah.
because you got to
But you
get
know it's
rained on
coming.
at least one time to truly be considered a true puff person. You got
That's
to get
true.
rained out at least one good time and
Yep.
soaked.
You got to get soaked too. It can't just be, oh, I got a little wet. No, you got to be
Right.
drenched. I know that our
Drenched.
tent filled up with water, and I mean, like it was a couple of inches of water. Thank goodness
Yeah.
we kept our clothes in the car because it's going to hit. So, but we
Yes.
ended up sleeping in one of the rooms on the floor of some of our friends. We just slept on the floor because it was so wet we couldn't stay in the
Right.
tent. Anyway,
Oh, that was lovely of them to take you guys in.
love pup, love pup. So, okay, sometimes you want a special offering besides what you're doing with the cakes and L. Do you do anything like that, or do you kind of just stick with the cakes and L being offering?
I generally stick with the cakes and ale, but sometimes when you go to some offsite, some rituals elsewhere, people will ask you to bring offerings.
Hmm.
So, like, it's usually something that's like natural that can be tossed in a fire, generally, is what I've taken to things. I've made little flower bundles. I've used toilet paper rolls that I kind of pinch the ends in and it kind of concaves and makes a little pouch,
Hmm.
and put my offerings in there and decorate the outside of it and throw that in there. So there's a couple different, things you can do, but generally at home or when it's just like coven stuff, I just go with the cakes and ale and like for libations.
Yeah, I do too. I usually stick with cakes and ale, and then offer that to Mother Earth whenever everything's done.
Hmm.
But it is nice sometimes, to have something extra if you're really, really working with, God or
Hmm.
goddess, like hand in hand. You might want to give a little bit of something extra, and as far as like really good offerings for ancestors, and I know we've talked about this before, but you
Hmm.
don't want to forget your ancestors. You don't just offer for God and goddess. You've got your ancestors there too. You can always do whiskey and tobacco. Those are two
Hmm.
general offerings, and a lot of times for God and goddess you can just have a separate glass of wine, or separate cakes if you're doing something special, or flowers.
Hmm.
I like the idea that you said about taking a little toilet paper roll and putting your stuff in there and decorating it, making it all pretty. That's a really good idea, that I'm definitely going to use. So, but
Right.
yeah.
And we're recycling a little bit.
Mhm. Yep. Okay, well, so now as we're getting toward the end of the ritual, that's whenever we do the grounding and releasing that we mentioned earlier. And
Hmm.
like you said, you might go outside and hug a tree. And sometimes you do it at the end of ritual prior to opening up the circle, or sometimes you wait till after. I don't really think that I don't think there's a rule for that. Do you? I mean, do you do it always after the ritual, or sometimes do you do grounding during?
Like a lot of times, if it's group, I generally think it happens most of the time during.
Mhm.
And then if it's like just me, because I'll do a lot of stuff solitary, So if it's just me, then I sometimes just ground afterwards. I'll
Mhm.
meditate a little bit or something to
About,
come down.
what about kids? Okay, you and I were talking the other day about children in ritual. Let's kind of talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
Well, and I've just with my granddaughters, I've got a little baby witch, and she wants to know like all of the things. Like my boys really didn't want to be bothered with it. They knew I'm a witch. They go on about their business. They just let it happen. But with her, I started looking up some stuff and looking into things because I wanted to see how to incorporate her into stuff and, make it easy for her. A lot of times, the kids' rituals, you want to make them like shorter and
Mhm.
lighter in atmosphere. You kind of want to practice with them a little bit, kind of like they're learning a play, that way they are comfortable with how the ritual is going to go. It gives them a chance to stretch their skills, their spiritual skills a little bit and build some confidence. uh, and I'm gonna let her call the quarters. I think that'd be great. It's something, one of the first basic things that she's going to learn anyway. And I think it's going to be great for her to be able to do that. And then she also feels like she's got responsibility in the ritual, and that they're, that they're wanted there.
Mhm.
Also, it prepares them for when they are going to be adult witches doing doing their own work. She want them to go in knowing what's going on. Some of the A couple of the rituals that I looked into to do with the kids were helping find her animal guide
Mhm.
and her tree guide, or her tree, and also teaching her a little bit of a healing ritual, because as a kid, sometimes your sister might fall down and scratch her knee, and I want you to be able to uh give her a little poof of healing energy right there, so you guys can get home until you get it cleaned up. Just
Mhm.
certain little things that really, as in a kid's mindset, I would, hey, they fall, they scratch themselves. I'm also a klutz, so I fall and I scratch myself too.
Me
So I
too.
like that I have friends that can help me out in case it's a lot more serious than
Then
a
a
scratch,
scratch.
But I definitely love the idea of her being able to, or any kid, I say her because I'm talking about my baby witch, but being able to like call in the quarters and then help with, a lot of times, since I am a kitchen witch, they're in helping me make like different herbal preparations and things already. But one thing I can do, which would be like a teaching spell or ritual, would be to put like, actually, here's how you put the intent of healing into this salve that we just made. Or
That's a
this
really good idea.
is like, we're making this soup. So why are we using this garlic, or why are we using the chili powder? What are the energies that we're bringing in from these herbs and this food in general? Why are we using lamb? Like with Imbolg coming, a lot of lamb and goat is probably what's going to be on my menu, will be lamb of some sorts,
Mhm.
because it's a representation of Imbolg,
Mhm.
and bringing in some herbs like mint or something to go with that lamb or that goat. They accompany each other well, but there's also different properties that mint has that we can work into that magical rite. So I love bringing the kids in with the food, because all my kids love to eat. So if I can make magic a part of the ritual of the experience of preparing this meal, or however you want to work it with your kids, we're definitely doing it. Just kind of baby it up a little bit for them, make it a little like lighter toned, do maybe some daytime rituals. I like to do stuff outside with kids a lot,
Mhm.
because they're little nature sponges anyway. So
Mhm.
put them outside in the natural environment and let them, work a spell. Heck, even a walk around the park could be a ritual
That's
in
true.
its own. Then you
What
go
about
have lunch.
age? Is there like a
Age,
particular age? Because there's a lot of witches don't think children belong in a ritual setting. What are
and
your feelings about that?
I'm kind of to each their own with that. I know some people do their rituals sky clad, so they don't think children should be around for that. I mean, my granddaughter, she came to me and told me she wanted to be a witch, and she's 8 years old.
That's so
So,
cute.
and the 6 year old, she's like, well, what are you guys doing? What's going on over there? The 11-year old doesn't want any part of it. And the 3 year old could care less. Like, she's here or there. But like, they came to me and asked me to, and I asked their parents
Hmm.
if it was okay. So that's how I handled it myself. Some people may still scoff or be upset with that, but she came to me and asked me, and I asked her mother and her father what they thought, and if I could work with her if she wanted to learn, and they said absolutely. because they'd rather her learn from me and know that I have friends that are knowledgeable and know far more than I do, and then I can ask questions on how to handle this baby witch, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, it's important to start
And
them young, start them
yes,
whenever they're interested in it. Go ahead and,
yeah,
expose them to the craft, and don't push it on anybody, but yeah, expose them to the craft if that's what they want, and their parents, if everybody's on board, then
mhm.
absolutely. So you don't think there's like a particular age as far as, even besides the Skyclad, I've been
Some
to
people,
places where they don't allow children in there at all, and I
there
have
are
really.
some. I've got mixed feelings about it, but I
Mhm,
also think it depends on the type of workings that you're doing as well.
mhm,
Because if you're
absolutely.
doing some serious workings, honestly, I love kids. I don't want to be distracted
Right.
and have to keep an eye out for kids and make sure that they're not over there at this tipping this candle over, or like, for some of the younger ones. So I completely understand not wanting children in some
Mhm.
certain ritual situations, but then you see people that have their babies blessed into you know so it just,
It just
and
depends.
it depends. I go
Mhm.
with that, like, you christen and baptize your children when they're infants, so can't we do the same thing?
Yeah. Awakening. And you have
Yeah.
awakening. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind children being a part of ritual. Like you said, it really just depends on what kind it is, what kind of working you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you're doing something that's very serious,
Right.
you don't want to expose children to, something like that. But yeah, you can kind of incorporate them in general, especially when it comes to like Sabbath ritual or,
Mm-hmm.
even a full moon.
Yes.
You can always kind of, incorporate their little people in there too, and everybody can
Yes.
be involved. So
Well,
yeah.
most definitely. Like celebrating the, like, seasons,
Hmm.
doing rituals like that with the kids can be fun because that's something that you can keep lighthearted. It can be an outdoor event, depending upon said weather, but you can make it more fun for them. They can, maybe there's a little scene that you can put together for them to act out, like they're the little flowers emerging from the ground, something to incorporate them and make it really more all about them, because we're there just to kind of guide them and help them, get through it.
Hmm.
So, but I really like the idea of doing something like having a spring ritual, not necessarily the spring Sabbath, just a spring ritual, like where we're out here picking stuff or looking at the buds coming up out of the ground and what trees are blooming, where everything's going to be confused this spring anyway because the way that our weather has been.
I'm
But
telling
there's
you.
all sorts of different stuff, like even making healing jewelry, or making a bracelet for someone could be a very ritual thing for us as well as kids, and something that they'll get some great joy out of, because they may have created that for someone else or for themselves, like.
Hmm.
So I got a lot to do with this baby witch. Stay
You have
tuned.
your work cut out for you. Stay tuned. We'll keep you on. We'll put you on periodically on the show so you can kind of
Yeah,
let us know where you're at with
like where
teaching your.
we're at with that. Yes, yes.
It's
I
so
think that's great.
important to whenever this is, I can't stress this enough. And you gave a perfect example earlier with the bats. It's important that if you're going to do, if you're going to do a ritual and you're going to do these steps, we've kind of briefly gone over, well, this means this and this is why you do that. But it's
Hmm.
really important that you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, then don't, if you don't know how to call in the god or the goddess, don't do it, because
Hmm.
you can get it a whole heap of crazy if you do something incorrectly, or you don't close things properly. offerings, things like that. You don't want to just say, okay, I'm just going to offer this because, you know, some gods and goddesses don't want an offering. A lot of times you do divination prior. I know it sounds like a lot, but you know, and I guess it is in a way, but you have to be responsible, you know,
Yeah,
for what you're doing. So
you
yeah.
definitely have to be responsible. And, you know, calling in the wrong deity or god or goddess, like you could call in the wrong one, not realizing because you really didn't quite do your research, but you heard Bill over here on his podcast say to use whoever it was, and you
Mm-hmm.
didn't do your research. So you called in the wrong deity for the exact, you know, ritual work that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yeah,
got to be mindful about who you're calling in. And like you
exactly.
said, if you don't know what you're doing or who you're calling in, don't call them in.
Yeah, don't do it.
Call
Just,
in
you
the
know,
ancestors
right.
or call in the
You can
great
have a
ones.
nice ritual without, you know, all the extra stuff. And you
Mm-hmm.
can definitely have a good, you know, you can have a beautiful ritual just by, you know, calling in your quarters, calling in your elements,
Mm-hmm.
or just, you know, ritualistically going over different steps of a spell. You know, you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to do all the other stuff if you don't know what you're doing. And you don't know how, or you don't know why you're doing it. That's so important that you know
Yes.
why you're doing these different things, you know, then don't do that part, you know, just come up with something very simple, make sure you
Yes.
do your research, you know, try to ask like an elder or just, you know, a fellow witch that's maybe been seasoned and practicing a little bit. Don't just jump in and say, okay, I'm going to write the ritual and I'm going to do it right now. And this is what's going to happen. You can get in trouble.
Yes, you can get in big trouble. I tell people watch doing love rituals and love spells because you don't know what you're getting yourself into sometimes. Because sometimes you get something that you can't get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to call your experienced witch and beg for help.
Yeah.
Like, can you
It's a
help
lot
me
harder to clean up a mess that
with
you've made
this?
than to prevent the mess in the first place. So,
Exactly.
because I think the
That's the
biggest
best.
thing for me to express to like new witches out there are people that are just, you know, interested in witchcraft and they want to perform a ritual. My biggest thing is, you know, make sure you don't just do it because it says to do this. Make
Mhm.
sure you know why you're doing this
While you're doing
particular part. You know, is there
it.
anything else that you can think of that you would like to throw out there?
Just working safely, like protecting yourself and, you know, looking at your space. Because, you know, some people can't have candles where they're at because they have oxygen or there's something going on in the space. So you might have to use a battery operated candle. Or if you're somewhere and you're renting a space, you might not be able to have live fire. So you might have to have somebody bring extra batteries and bring the battery operated candles. So just be mindful of the space that you're working in, but always protect yourself and just be safe.
Be safe. And you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
have all the fancy tools. Just to throw that in
No,
there again. You don't have to
no.
have them. It's nice to have your tool. I like to have tools, but you don't have
Yes.
to have all that stuff. You can just make your sacred space very simple and where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, education on it is one of the biggest things, and safety for sure. There's no doubt.
Almost definitely.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess that we're at the end of another show, and I thank you so much for coming on here. It's so good to see you again,
Thanks for having me. It was
and
wonderful to see you.
we'll have you back. Blessed
All
be.
right, I'll see you soon.